Alright, so I want to start off with pleasantries. Welcome back to this tactical intellectual retrieval channel. This is, of course, the Massacre series, and my reason for doing this is because we want to reinstall or reestablish facts that generations before us had, or they were well equipped with. You know, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. Because why am I doing this? Well, generations of other people, other groups, they're feeling bold, they're kind of losing their memory right now, and they're chirping a lot when it comes to crime and, you know, talking about, oh, these are inherent traits within us and everything. But we have to fight against that and present facts. I have documents and everything. And of course, looking at this channel here, I've already done the Memphis Massacre and the New Orleans Massacre. So let's go ahead and go into the St. Bernard Parish Massacre of 1868. Now, I have a very short article here. As you see on the screen, it's taken from nolajazzmuseum.org. And of course, the title is the 1868 St. Bernard Massacre. And I don't know who the author is, but this is what it says here. It says, days before the tumultuous presidential election of 1868, St. Bernard Parish descended into chaos as African American men gained the right to vote. White Democrats of the parish feared losing their majority. Armed groups mobilized to suppress these recently emancipated voters in the hopes of regaining a way of life turned upside down by the Civil War and Reconstruction. Freed people were dragged from their homes and murdered in cold blood. Many fled to the cane fields to hide from their attackers. The reported number of those killed varies from 35 to 135. The tragedy was hidden, but implications reverberated throughout the South and lingered for generations. Author and historian Chris Deere reveals the horrifying true story behind the St. Bernard Parish Massacre. Okay, so now in order to reinforce what I just read, I want to show this Wikipedia article here. It says 1868 St. Bernard Parish Massacre. The first line says, in 1868, St. Bernard Parish was home to one of the deadliest massacres in Louisiana history. Let's drop down. It says the use of violence to suppress Republican votes was successful. And it goes on to tell us that Grant only received one vote from St. Bernard Parish despite having a Republican majority. And then again, the reported number of freedmen killed varies from 35 to 135. And the number of whites killed was 2. Alright, so this is the highlight of this presentation here. This is a Zocalo article by Chris Deere, and it is entitled Unraveling a Forgotten Massacre in My Louisiana Hometown. A history teacher discovers a racially driven rampage that still haunts his students' lives. And it's from February 7th, 2018 there. So here's how it looks. And of course, I got the URL right above if you wanted to check it out for yourself, and the link will be in the description. So let's get into it. This is some really good background information. Look at what it says here. It says, on a chilly Louisiana afternoon in October 1868, Louis Wilson left the courthouse where he testified in an ongoing case. Wilson was a freedman living in St. Bernard Parish. The Civil War had been over for 3 years, and the 14th Amendment, which gave Wilson full citizenship, had passed 3 months before. Across the South, tensions were high because of the upcoming presidential election that would decide the fate of Reconstruction. Wilson rode home alongside the winding Mississippi River, where he was confronted by a group of armed white men on horseback. He was aware that freed people had been killed the day before, but wrongly assumed that the carnage had ended. The men ordered him to dismount, and one of them struck his jaw with the butt of a shotgun. Wilson was thrown into a wagon with other captive freedmen and transported to a makeshift prison. Later that evening, Wilson and a few others were dragged out of their cells, lined up and blasted with shotguns. Everyone was killed except Wilson, who somehow crawled into a nearby cane field and waited for 3 days until he felt safe. Over the next few days, white men toured through the parish attempting to eliminate any further threats, leaving behind them a trail of black corpses. Estimates of the massacre range from 35 to more than 100 murdered. So you see we have discrepancies in the number, 35 to 100 to 135 overall. Probably more than that 135 altogether. But let's go ahead and move forward. So I want to skim for a second instead of read verbatim, but check out what it says. He's talking about how historically all of these massacres, they were labeled as riots, but I like what he says. This event has usually been labeled the St. Bernard riots. It should be termed the 1868 St. Bernard Parish Massacre. And we did a pretty good job by changing the wording of it to convey what it actually was. Because a riot signifies, a back and forth between two parties, or both parties were culpable or responsible. Meanwhile, these massacres in essence were really one-sided. That's why it was a massacre, obviously. But check out this right here. It says, the second paragraph. He says, what I discovered was that a murderous rampage had occurred in my hometown and almost no one knew. The perpetrators never discussed their atrocities. Local records were lost due to numerous floods, including Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I researched these events for years, driving to and from work, down roads and past former cane fields that were once the bloody battleground of Reconstruction. Not only did I live in the very parish where the massacre took place, but the surnames of the assailants and the victims matched those of some of my students, both black and white, who worked together, played sports together, and shared lunches. As I delved deeper into U.S. congressional archives, I uncovered investigations commissioned by the Freedmen's Bureau and the Louisiana State Legislature, and correspondence with the then President Andrew Johnson. But my most startling discovery was that several of my students were the descendants of those involved, victims and perpetrators alike. So now let's go ahead and return to the past, so to speak. And it says the racial tension that sparked the massacre was not unique to St. Bernard Parish, of course. By 1868, the South had lost the Civil War and was struggling to rebuild its battered economy, which had depended heavily on an enslaved population. Louisiana was under federal military occupation during Reconstruction, and black males or melanated males had obtained the right to vote. The stakes were high for Southern elites in the presidential election, the first since the end of the war. If they could solidify a win for Horatio Seymour, a Copperhead Democrat who had promised to roll back Reconstruction policies, they might regain some of the power they had lost. That's the key right there. That's why all of this stuff was happening. Seymour rallied against Negro supremacy. That's what they thought that was. Making things fair was Negro supremacy to them. People are pathetic, man. And proudly painted himself as the white man's candidate. Whites believed that a victory by Seymour's Republican opponent, Ulysses S. Grant, former commander of the Union Army, would pave the way for racial equality, leading to the collapse of economic and political systems that favored whites in the South. There you have it right there. Preferential treatment. Okay, after the Civil War ended, many impoverished whites faced increased economic hardship. Wealthier whites exploited their fears and blamed freed blacks as the cause for their ills. Newspapers, here we go, this is key right here, the propaganda arm. And it says, Newspapers owned by these elites were full of anti-Republican and racialized propaganda. Many poor whites perceived Reconstruction as a form of government occupation that disadvantaged them while favoring freed people. Conditions were ripe for dangerous rhetoric to turn lethal. And this is something that, we're not really dwelling on the past mindlessly and without reason, but we're learning from the past because, again, this is a occurrence that happened back then, generations ago, that can go in a cycle if we're not mindful and careful of it and aware of it. We see the same thing happening in our present day. These people, print media, news media, whatever type of form of media, it would depend on who's the head of that medium, that type of medium, and who's under that person and what their ideologies are. Because like it says in this article here, the newspapers owned by elites, they were full of, let's just say, racialized propaganda. And of course, poor, ignorant, deaf, dumb, and blind, whatever group you are. But in this instance, it says poor whites perceived Reconstruction as a form of government occupation that disadvantaged them while favoring freed people. And then, of course, the conditions that that medium creates due to its influence. It says that conditions were ripe for dangerous rhetoric to turn lethal. And that's the whole idea there. A print media or whatever type of medium, they can make conditions ripe for dangerous rhetoric, and that dangerous rhetoric can turn lethal. We have plenty of examples in this country alone of that being true. So in our present day, we have a group of people who like to claim other groups of people as being the usual suspects, predisposed to criminality, black brutes, other nefarious actions or traits that you can think of. But let's check out the branches of their family tree that's above them, aka their forefathers and ancestors. So look at what it says here. Violence in St. Bernard Parish started a pre-election pro-Seymour rally on Sunday, October 25th, 1868. As white marchers passed by Eugene Locke, a freed man, they yelled for him to hurrah for Seymour. Locke refused. Someone grabbed Locke to intimidate him into submission. But as Locke remained steadfast, the crowd grew increasingly agitated. So where's that impulse control that the descendants, the present day people, speak of? I don't know, but let's go ahead and read further. It says, one white man tried to stab Locke with a knife, while another shot at him, narrowly missing his target. Locke drew his own pistol and fired back, hitting the shoulder of the man who had fired at him. Outnumbered, Locke tried to escape, but was shot in the head and mortally wounded before finally being stabbed. As news of the altercation sped through the small community, men grabbed their arms and prepared for battle. Yet there was no battle, only a one-sided rampage by marauding whites. Throughout the week, armed white militias hunted freed people like Louis Wilson as if for sport. In his testimony to an agent of the Freedmen's Bureau shortly after the tragedy, Wilson said of the parish that he once called home, "This is such a cold place. I am afraid I will die here." Now, check out this barbarism here by white people of that day. It says, according to an 1868 report by the Freedmen's Bureau and an 1869 report by the Louisiana General Assembly, white mobs broke into homes and shot residents at close range, conducted executions in the streets, and killed those who tried to intervene. They plundered former slave quarters and stole items they found useful, most notably registration papers. A black pregnant woman was hacked to death by men with Bowie knives next to the courthouse. A white police officer was murdered by mobs for trying to keep the peace. It was 19th century terrorism, and it succeeded While countless numbers of freed people fell victim to the violence, one white man, Pablo Sanfeliu, was killed by freed blacks in retaliation. Any legitimate supervisor of the presidential election was jailed, executed, or fled. Grant received only one vote in St. Bernard Parish as Seymour swept the state. According to the historian John C. Rodriguez, Republicans captured the presidency in 1868, but white terror carried the day in Louisiana. Despite the federal investigation, no one was arrested for the killing of freed people. Black survivors identified white neighbors as their assailants, but no justice was sought. Instead, more than 100 freed people were arrested by local authorities and vigilantes for the killing of Pablo Sanfeliu. Over time, the massacre faded into obscurity. To this day, its only physical reminder is the tombstone of Pablo Sanfeliu, located in St. Bernard Cemetery, which reads, Pablo Sanfeliu, assassinated by slaves, incited by carpetbag wool, died October 1869. The inaccuracies on Sanfeliu's tombstone misrepresent the circumstances surrounding his death. The incorrect date suggests that it was erected a significant amount of time after the massacre, perhaps memorializing his death as if he were a martyr. The engraver referred to the freed people as slaves, most importantly by placing blame on carpetbaggers, the derogatory term applied to Northerners and other outsiders who had migrated to the South during Reconstruction. The inscription implies that Sanfeliu was an innocent murder victim. And of course, you can see the tombstone, that picture there, and you can make out barely what it says on it. Alright, so now we move on to the last part here, and it says, nearly a decade after the massacre, Reconstruction officially ended. By 1877, Louisiana had returned to home rule, which meant that the black population was no longer protected by federal occupation. The new state government focused on suppression of black voters. The new state constitution allowed for arbitrary literacy tests and issued poll taxes, while also granting grandfather clauses that allowed white people to circumvent those obstacles to voting. By 1898, the black voting bloc had declined from 164,000 to a mere 1,342. By 1910, that number dropped to 730, less than 0.5% of eligible black men. Their political voice was silenced throughout Louisiana. A massacre of this magnitude deserves a place in history. In researching a book on the incident, I sought the assistance of locals who were aware of the ordeal, some from oral histories. Subsequently, I incorporated the story of the St. Bernard Parish massacre into my teaching curriculum so that students could be made aware of their community's history and its relevance today. Other teachers also have the book in their classroom and discuss it with their students, examining how dangerous rhetoric can lead to deadly actions and the dire consequences of racist scapegoating. My students are often shocked when they learn about this chapter of their community's history, but it provides opportunities to have open dialogue with one another about their roots and to bring these conversations into their own homes. I have been criticized by some in the community for unearthing buried history. Some have claimed that the timing was inappropriate, that it would worsen existing racial tensions. However, the overwhelming majority of people in the community have been supportive and eager to know more. Alright, man, listen, it's so ridiculous for people that's like of the opinion that this is unearthing buried history, or that the timing of it is inappropriate, or that it would somehow worsen existing racial tensions. You have to speak on it to be aware, so again, like, you don't fall into the same trap of repeating that history. Certain groups of people have to put their ego and their pride aside to think that they didn't stem from unhinged people, killers, rapists, thieves, and all of that stuff. Very malicious people. It doesn't matter if that kills your image of self or that you feel embarrassed. I mean, think about the victims of these people that had to go through all that stuff during that time. What about them? So the present day descendants, they gotta let that go. The descendants of the victims, we gotta tell that story, man. That's part of our story, you know. Our ancestors or our forefathers, the branches above us in the proverbial family tree, you know, they had to go through much humiliation just for existing. They had curriculum telling them they were 3/4 of human or not even human at all. So they were subject to crazy black codes, and you had police that was killing them, and when they protected themselves, they got arrested and railroaded in court. You know, the ego today is off the charts by the descendants of the perpetrators. And little known fact, I mean, I'm not trying to have people feel guilty, but we just trying to tell our story. And however you feel, I mean, it is what it is. There is harmful rhetoric that we have to really combat. And when I hear things like 15% equals 54 or 98% or the usual suspects, I can't just sit back and let this rhetoric, this status quo belief or ideology just go on unabated. I'm definitely going to challenge it. And when these people who are making these claims are descendants of degenerate murderers and rapists, I'm definitely going to highlight that and throw it back in your face, man. And I'll equip my people with this knowledge so that they can protect themselves, because it can't happen. It doesn't make any sense for this to happen. Like, you come from this family tree right here and you want to denigrate and disparage us? Nah, it doesn't make any sense, man. It's nonsensical to me. So we're gonna defend ourselves from that type of rhetoric. So let's go ahead and go into the effects of the St. Bernard Parish massacre. On the screen, I have this slide, and we see the first bullet point is the death toll. And it says it's between 35 and 135 freedmen, and one white man died. That is between 134 melanated people died, and one pale, aka white man, died. So what's the outcome? Well, check out the bullet point. Is no arrests were made for the murder of the swartz, which means black or melanated people in the area. But the cops, they did arrest 100 or more swartz for the murder of the one white man. We can't make this up. How are 100 people arrested for a single murder? Golly, man, it's comical. So let's go to the third bullet point. The other effects of the St. Bernard Parish massacre. Well, burglarization, destruction of property, and being assaulted or murdered led to displacement and PTSD, which caused economic disruption amongst the swartz in the area. Now, just like their ancestors back then, the descendants of these people or the perpetrators, they like to downplay it as minute, a little bit serious, but not that serious. It was just a couple people, and money was minimal. But you see, it was pretty serious or adverse effects from that massacre that happened in St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana. Now, I do admit that I made a blunder and egregious error in my previous presentation on the Memphis massacre. I was running long anyway, so I skipped the continuing tradition segment. Now, that is unforgivable on my part, and I apologize. I will continue that in this presentation and in subsequent presentations that follow. And remember too that the goal and aim of this segment is to bring a realistic viewpoint to this whole notion that melanated people, swarthy people, aka black people, are inherently transgressional in nature. So we have to bring balance to these things and show another side. We have to show that the people who are making these claims online and in various forms of media, whether it be dog whistles or microaggressions that they show, we have to show that this is really projection along with dissidence, or basically an act of war, especially when they denigrate and disparage the melanated peoples. And it's really an ideology that is based off of mythology and a heavy dose of insecurity from a historical standpoint, because like I say, I have a channel, Tactical Intellectual HIT, which is historical, intellectual, and tactical. It goes off of history that, is basically hidden. And when these people delve into history, especially Europe, Asia, India, etc., they don't see themselves, the people who seeded those areas, they were all melanated. So that plays a big part, in my opinion, right there. All right, so I kind of went off topic for a little bit. Let me just go ahead and go into the continuing tradition segment right here. And this is who we have to showcase. We have this genius named Mark Adams Prieto of Arizona. And as you see from the New York Times article, it says man plotted mass shooting in Atlanta to incite race war, officials say. And it says prosecutors said Mark Adams Prieto of Arizona planned to target black concert goers at an Atlanta venue. He was indicted on hate crime and firearm charges. So now let's delve into the article and get more background information on this story. So let's drop down and let's give credit, first of all, to Orlando Mayorquin. And it says an Arizona man who planned to commit a mass shooting at an Atlanta rap concert as a way of inciting a race war has been indicted by a federal grand jury on hate crime and firearm charges. The man, Mark Adams Prieto, hatched a plan in several discussions with two people working with the FBI who posed as racist extremists to carry out a mass shooting targeting black people and other people of color at a concert in Atlanta on May 14th and May 15th, the Justice Department said on Tuesday. Mr. Prieto intended for the shooting to incite a race war before the presidential election, prosecutors said in a news release. Mr. Prieto, 58, was reported to the authorities last year by an acquaintance who said he had made concerning comments calling for a mass shooting targeting black people and others, according to officials. The man told the authorities that Mr. Prieto began making alarming comments, including advocating for a mass shooting and specifically targeting blacks, Jews, or Muslims, the affidavit said. The indictment said that beginning in January at several gun shows around Arizona, Mr. Prieto discussed mass shooting plans with an undercover agent and the man who had reported him, now working as an informant. In a conversation at a gun show on January 21st, Mr. Prieto asked the men for their help carrying out a mass shooting at a rap concert in Atlanta, where he believed there would be a large number of black concert goers. I like that, man. Where he believed there would be a large number of black concert goers. Mr. Prieto suggested they leave behind Confederate flags at the attack site and shout things like "Black lives don't matter, white lives matter," to make clear the shooting was racially motivated, according to the affidavit. Over the course of several gun show meetings in February, March, and April, Mr. Prieto expounded on tactics and how to effectively use their weapons in the attack. During that time, he sold the undercover agent firearms, according to the affidavit, and confirmed that the attack would take place at a concert at State Farm Arena on May 14th or 15th. Yo, this guy's a real Einstein. Why do I say that? Well, let's continue reading. Bad Bunny one of the biggest names in Latin American music, went on to hold concerts at the venue on those dates. As May approached, Mr. Prieto suggested pushing back the attack date to June or July, emphasizing that it should be done before the election in November. In May, he said he planned to travel to Atlanta to conduct reconnaissance around the arena. He initially told investigators that he had been traveling to Florida to visit his mother, according to the affidavit. He later confessed to the authorities about the planned attack, but said that he did not intend to go forward with it. Alright, man, this dude's a genius at Einstein. Or he's probably one of the members of the Three Stooges. Larry Prieto, Curly Prieto, Mo Prieto. Dude's an idiot, man. Yeah, we should be scared of these people. I mean, we should be, but they're so blunder filled that you can't really take them that serious, man. Only their violence, man, and propensity towards it, man. This dude, yo, that was funny right there, man. Talking about he wanted to have Confederate flags and just place them all over the chairs as he gunned down people and screaming out, "Black lives don't matter, white lives." I mean, what kind of mentality does he have to think of this stupid? It's like it's so stupid, man. Alright. Yeah, but like I say, man, I mean, I'm laughing because it's just like, yo, this dude's an idiot, bro. He can't even do things right. He remind me of those KKK members on Django that had the little pillowcases with the holes in them and had to, couldn't even adjust it properly. He had it on backwards or whatever. He just doltish, man. Straight up. Good thing this guy is moronic and ignorant about us, man, because if he would have went to that Bad Bunny concert, he really would not have seen his intended targets, and plus he would not have pulled that off anyway, man, because he's woefully out of place, man. Say if there was like a Jay-Z concert or a Nas concert and everything, he would have probably walked up and be like, nah, not today, and went back to Arizona. But that just highlights the drastic steps that these people will take to actuate a thought in their mind into a real life terrorist event or a violent occurrence between flesh and blood. So as you can see, this guy really has no impulse control. He's really violent, and he intended to do this stuff, man. I mean, he spoke about all that violence and everything, but the people, the white supremacists in our day, just like back then, with that black brute myth, they would have you believe that that's all we think about. Us melanated people worldwide, especially in the United States here, they would have you believe that we're just the ones who are bubbling forth all this violent, thoughts from inward. Where this guy, he was talking to federal agents unknowingly. Where's that high IQ? Nowhere to be found. And then he planned to go to Atlanta and thinking that, a bunch of melanated folks want to see Bad Bunny. I mean, probably from Cuba, the DR, or Puerto Ricans, or somewhere, all the melanated Latin American folks. I doubt they would have drove from either New York or Miami or Orlando just to see Bad Bunny. They would have seen him where they at, up top or in Florida. So that's that high IQ again. I digress, though. It is what it is. But what do we have on the docket? Well, we got the Opelousas Massacre coming up, so look out for that. And that's the end of this video presentation here. Take care.